Welcome everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. With me, Alistair Mackenzie. Alistair, in Italy we used to say that the luck is blind, but the misfortune see very well. I think it was happened today to Lazio, right? Very unlucky to get this defeat tonight.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, there were certain elements that definitely didn't go our way. Badel's shot hitting the crossbar, Radu making an amazing save as well. But in the end, I think the Lazio kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by really retreating. I mean, I suppose you can equally credit Genoa for pushing the numbers forward and really taking the game to us in the last 20 minutes or so. But yeah, it's always hard to take these results, and particularly when we're doing a podcast immediately afterwards.
Yeah, this is really tough, guys. Especially because, as you were saying, I thought till the 70, maybe 75 minutes, Lazio was in control of the match. Can we say that? Had maybe better chances to score again and close the match, and then things start going the wrong way. When Radu came out, Lazio started losing the confidence. Obviously, we have to remember that Lazio were without 10 players, and then at a certain point lost Radu, and there was only one real defender on the pitch, that was Acerbi. So we were playing with a three-man defense with only Acerbi central defender, and the other two were Leiva and Patrick. So it was really a tough condition for Lazio. But, I have to say that even on the draw, I was thinking this draw is useless for the Champions League fight. But at least it would have, give a little bit of confidence for the team. But losing like this, it's very negative.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the end, I would have taken a draw, given how much Genoa were kind of battering on the door. And Lazio really weren't showing any signs of being interested in winning the game, the occasional counter-attack. But it was a really strange performance. It was a real kind of Jekyll and Hyde one, where up until, I just said to you before we came on, up until about 70 minutes or so, there was so much to be positive about with that performance, and the way that a lot of the fringe players coming into the team, this was a big chance for them that they've not been getting a lot of this season. So that's the kind of positive spin you can put on an injury crisis, is it gives other guys a chance to make an impression. And certainly Milan Badel, but I'd say also Danilo Cataldi was doing that. But yeah, I mean, like you say, I think that Radu going off injured was about as bad as it could have got really at the time, because looking at the bench, there's only one defender on the bench who was capable of playing, which was Sergio Calai from the Primavera, and I think probably Inzaghi just wasn't willing to let him make his debut in that kind of situation where we're under the cosh a bit, so he preferred to move Lucas back. But Lucas hasn't played there for Lazio; it's not his position. And yeah, what happened in the end? They did require a great strike from Criscito to actually make the difference, but it's a real shame, I think, given that up until, like I say, about 70 minutes, things had been looking quite good.
Yeah, especially because we have to remember the situation Lazio had to play. 10 players out. Immobile was clearly not in a good shape. I think he touched a couple of balls all match long, but still was able to get credit for an assist. Leiva had to come in, that was supposed to be out. Come in and play in not his position, as you were saying. Patrick plays central defender, which was terrible. Again, it's not his position. And still, Lazio was one goal ahead, and in the second half, I thought in the first 20 minutes of the second half, they were in control. Then everything tumbled. So yeah, very bad fortune, very unlucky Lazio today. I don't know. Is the Champions League race over?
Well, no, it's not. I mean, look, we're still in mid-February, and there's a 4-point gap now. But anything can really happen between now and then. It's, of course, it's not over, but I mean, it's definitely going to be a lot harder now. It requires more than simply beating Milan to reach that place, which previously, even if we'd held out for a draw tonight, if there's a 3-point gap, given that Serie A is calculated head-to-head, just beating Milan would have been enough to send us above them. So, no, I don't think it's over, but I do think that this part of the season is the time where that could be decided. Lazio have to get through such a challenging period of obviously the injury crisis, but also an incredible number of fixtures piling up with a trip to Spain on Wednesday and then a Coppa Italia game and then the derby. This is an absolutely brutal part of the season, and the next 3 games are all really, really tough. And I think that by the end of that, if the worst case scenario happens and they all end in defeat, then I think the season is not looking great. But hopefully they can turn it around.
I like your optimism. But okay, we've been negative. Let's start talking about the positive things, because otherwise we get depressed. Milan Badel, probably best performance in Lazio shirt today. Not only the goal that was amazing, I was kind of hoping Correa did something like that, because that's the skill of the player. Instead, well, we're going to talk about Correa later, but very positive performance by Badel. At the end, Inzaghi was right to keep him. You agree?
Yeah, I mean, without doubt, it was his best performance in a Lazio shirt, and I think that Inzaghi was also right. I tweeted during the game that I think Inzaghi was right to reiterate before the match that this is a player who came into the season after a World Cup, and he's taken a while to reach full fitness, as Milinkovic-Savic has done as well. And we've definitely not seen the best of him yet, but he has obviously had some fitness problems since then. And we talked last week, and I think Sam was saying that he's definitely not a player who seems to be able to make an impact off the bench so much. And yeah, I think that this Badel we saw today was a lot better for me. I think he looked to move the ball quicker. He looked to move the ball forward as well. Into his range of passing was really impressive. Balls over the top, balls into feet in dangerous places, spraying all different kind of angles and distances. And yeah, I thought he took his goal brilliantly as well. That's not really the kind of thing you expect from him, or at least have expected from him in a Lazio shirt, because I don't know if you agree, but I think for me, he's often played it too safe in his games with Lazio so far. And today he was actually being a bit more proactive and seemed to really make the difference as a result.
Yes, I agree. And that was probably one of the best part of his match today. He was aggressive. He started to play football instead of doing very, conservative passes like we tend to see too often by Marusic. I thought, yeah, he played really well. Don't know if having Cataldi near, that played very well today, helped Badel as well. But yeah, I thought it was a great performance by Badel, probably the best. And I hope that he will continue like that, because as you were saying, there are a lot of very important match now coming on, and we're going to need him.
Yeah, and something else that someone had mentioned during the game, I saw on social media as well, is the prospect of him playing alongside Lucas, which is something that hasn't really happened so far for a few reasons, I suppose, and one of them being that Badel's not been fully fit, but also when he has been fit, Lucas often hasn't, so they've not really been at 100% at the same time. So I don't know, I think that's probably something we'll start to see a bit more of, because in my mind, if you do play them both together, it does offer the defence a bit more protection, which they clearly need. And you can, still play Milinkovic-Savic in front of them, and that will allow him a bit more license to cause problems in the final third instead of having to pay attention to his defensive responsibilities. So I don't know if that's something we'll see more of immediately, but I do expect by the end of the season that Inzaghi might have a look at that a bit more.
Yeah, and if you remember, this summer was part of the plan, right? To try and play Leva and Badel together to give extra coverage to Lazio defense, and have maybe Milinkovic-Savic more in attacking position, maybe near Luis Alberto with Ciro Immobile as a central striker. It never happened, so I'm curious to see if Inzaghi is going to try it, even though it's not time really to test things now, because they're all very, very important and complicated match Lazio have to try to win to keep the season alive. So I don't know if Simone Inzaghi is willing to risk something today in the next coming match. On the other side, though, Alistair, you have to say that he's forced to risk because there are not many options. We don't know when Parolo's going to get back. We don't know when Marusic. I wish Marusic was injured, but it's Milinkovic-Savic that is injured. You don't know when he's going to get back. So we really don't have that many options in central midfield. So yeah, probably he's going to test that solution very soon.
Yeah, and it's not something that you really thought we'd be saying this season, is that we don't have any options in central midfield, because it seemed to be the part of the team that we were most stocked with, I suppose, and have the best quality of depth in. The likes of Berisha and Cataldi barely featured this season, along with Badel as well, who you've already mentioned. So, yeah, I mean, and you've got Bruno Jordão coming on for his debut, and I felt a bit sorry for him in a way, because there was a lot of hype, obviously, about Pedro Neto's debut, but if you compare the two, Pedro Neto definitely got the better deal there, because he got to come on in a game against a Serie C team that has already been won and, basically have a go at them, whereas Jordão was brought on really in the heat of battle in a very difficult situation. So I don't know about you, but I don't feel like there was really anything I could learn from what we saw from Jordão today, given the circumstances.
Well, I thought that was a really complicated debut. First of all, I was astonished to see him coming in. I didn't expect it to see Bruno Jordão coming in, honestly. But I have to say that I was really surprised. He played, I wouldn't say like, a leader, but with experience. He was tough. He was, I saw in this match Caicedo, Marusic making stupid mistakes while Bruno Jordão was fighting on every ball. I got the impression that, as you were saying, we all were thinking about Pedro Neto, talent, etc. And we all thought that Bruno Jordão probably it's rubbish. Instead, he played today, and I said, why didn't he play before? The level of the team didn't decrease. I thought he played well. Obviously, as you were saying, it was a very tough situation for him, and this just increased my value, my consideration of the player, because you're making your debut in Serie A. You're 20 years old, so very young, especially for the Italian football average, in a very complicated situation, and you play so well. I was really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he did anything particularly special or stand out, but he did do what you want to see from a debutant, which is he did seem to be giving everything he's got and had a lot of energy. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see him, I suppose, with more game time or from the start. But I mean, the reason that he's not really had that chance is obviously just because of the immense competition. I think he really needed something like this to actually happen to stand any chance of playing any matches this season, because with the competition for places in that midfield, and then even when there's this injury crisis where we've got 10 players missing, he's still on the bench. And then, so he required that, and by the time it got to Radu being injured, there was literally no one really left who could step into that midfield unless he was going to bring on Neto instead. But I don't know. I'm not convinced we're going to see an awful lot more of him unless there's the injury crisis gets even worse.
But this is the situation, I think. Leiva played injured and in another position. Now, both Pedro Neto and Bruno Jordao are out of the Europa League, so they're not going to have a chance to play on Wednesday. But, wow, I don't want to think about Jordao playing at the Derby, but who will recover in the central mid position to play there?
Well, I mean, you would hope it would be Leiva, Badel and Cataldi at this stage as a starting three, and then obviously Romulo is an option who's, when we signed him, it was talked about the fact that he was able to play as a Metzala as well as on the wing, but at this stage, given the fact that Marisic's form has absolutely nosedived even further than it already had, I'd say recently, I'd prefer, and I think from the comments we've had, most people would prefer having Marisic out of the team, put Romulo on the right wing, and then if you've got Leiva, Badel and Cataldi in the middle, it's not necessarily the most mobile midfield, but it is one that offers you quite a lot of experience, which I think you need in these games.
Yeah, but even Romulo, today he missed two very good chances. Let's not forget about that. Okay, criticize Marusic. I think it's right. But the performance of Romulo wasn't great today. He had really two very good chances to score and missed both of them. And it's not that Radu made a great save like against Correa. Simply missed two good chances. So, I don't want to sound too harsh, but the winter signing of Lazio is Romulo, who is a player who can be useful, can play in different position. The winter transfer of Milan are Piatek and Paqueta. They're all two playing. They all have scored. Piatek yesterday lead Milan to win against Atalanta. There's a huge difference there. So, yeah, we should talk about this as well. We cannot say, the race is still on, etc. But the transfer market is important. If you buy Romulo while the other buy Messi, it's difficult. It's difficult to keep up.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Milan are absolutely desperate to get that Champions League place, and that shows with the moves they were willing to make in the market. And the difference is, I've said this before, but I just think it's not reasonable for the club to set Inzaghi the target of Champions League qualification and then not compete. Because it's easy to say, look, we've put together this squad that we believe is worthy of a top four place. But then you need to take a step back and, like you say, compare it to those around you, because realistically, you're competing with the squads of the two Milan clubs and the investment they're putting in, and it's not fair, I don't think, as an expectation on Inzaghi to demand Champions League football when you're signing Romulo on a 6-month loan while the others, like you say, bring in Piontek. And even if you go beyond that and you look at Fiorentina getting Muriel or Sampdoria getting Gabbiadini, I mean, this Lazio are crying out for Vice Immobile. We've talked about this for ages. So if Fiorentina and Sampdoria can bring in players of that quality, we would have loved either of those players as a Vice Immobile. I would have taken either of those guys as a heartbeat. But and they're guys we've talked about in the past being linked with Lazio. So, we're not just talking about Milan, who have more money to spend than Lazio. We're talking about clubs below us in the table who are bringing in more impressive players.
Yeah, we link Gabbiadini and Muriel to Lazio even this summer, if I'm not wrong. So. And so this is why sometimes when people say, Inzaghi is a terrible manager, I would love to remind them that, take the team of Inzaghi and then do better. Because Gattuso, who I don't think is a better manager than Inzaghi, not at all, has far more option than Inzaghi. And I agree with you, saying that the target for Lazio's Champions League is tough. It's not correct, because then you have to do a transfer market for the Champions League. You said that Milan was desperate to reach Champions League, you take risk. And they bought Piatek. 35 millions, people were saying maybe it's too much. This is a player who had 6 months very good. It's a risk, but sometimes you have to take risk to win, to achieve your target. And Tare and Lotito never take those type of risk. I think 35 millions is the amount that usually Lazio spend in one summer transfer market, not for one player. So, I mean, Inzaghi is human. He can make mistakes, absolutely. But one point is having Cutrone on the bench. The other is having Caicedo. I mean, there's a huge difference with Piatek playing, you know. So, and analysis today, Caicedo, for me, was terrible. Not only he didn't do nothing when he was attacking, but in both 2 goals of Genoa, there's a mistake of Caicedo. In the first one, he stands still and watch. In the second one, he deflected the ball with his head, but instead of throwing it away, he just left it there.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a defender, but at the same time, you've got to know what you're doing in those set piece situations because they'll train them. You know, that's pretty standard coaching, is to be able to have your defensive set piece set up right. And it was really disappointing. The first goal in particular was hugely disappointing because it was obviously there's a big element of luck to it, but also I was just amazed by the amount of space that Sanabria had in that central position. I mean, if you're defending a corner, then surely that area should be taken. That area should be occupied or crowded, and he has time to get the shot away. But yeah, I mean, you know, Caicedo, I wouldn't say his errors were so bad that you can blame him single-handedly for either goal. But I just think, again, it was another example of the fact that, like we've just been talking about, you're not bringing on quality when you take off Immobile and bring him on. I don't think it was the worst decision, though, to take off Immobile, because I think we have to be very, very careful with the way that we're using him and how to monitor his fitness and his injury situation, because that's more important than almost anything else. So if they had concerns about him, I don't mind them taking him off. But I just thought, I don't know, at that stage of the game, with Genoa kind of pushing forward and Lazio really looking to counter by that stage, can you not give Neto a run? You know, use that pace, let him run at their defenders, because they looked really uncomfortable with Correa when he was really direct with them in the first half. They didn't really look very at ease with his kind of running style, and I think if you had another player like that who's capable of firing into those spaces, it might have been a bit more dangerous than putting Caicedo on, but I suppose we're used to this by now.
Yeah. Funny fact, Immobile didn't want to get out. Inzaghi called him and he said, "No, mister, let me play at least other couple of minutes." And then Inzaghi took him off anyway. I thought, honestly, it was the right decision to make. It's true was a very important match, but at the same time, as you were saying, you have to think also at the other matches, and it's important to not lose even Immobile, who just came back, and you could see that he wasn't in great shape or condition. So I thought it was the right solution. Then we go back as what we said before. There are not many options there, so you had to play Caicedo. But taking out Immobile was absolutely the perfect thing to do, so you cannot complain about that. But yeah, I was expecting a little bit more even from Correa. I thought in the first half, as usually, he turns on and turns off too often. In the second half, he started better, but then as soon as Genoa started pushing, he disappeared. And as you were saying, he had a lot of spaces he could run, but when he was needed more, when Lazio could counteract often and use those spaces, he pretty much disappeared like Caicedo. So again, was really disappointed about the performance of Correa, who, you know, I was hoping to see him making the difference, or at least helping this team much more than he did.
Yeah, and we really need a player like him to step up at this time, when we're so up against it and so many of the attacking options are gone. He's been the one constant, I suppose, who would be in the team anyway. And yeah, I think you're right when you say he's hot and he's cold. That's been most of his season, really, has been a bit like that. But I think he is just one of these players, and we saw the same thing with Keita Balde, same thing with Felipe Anderson. You get these guys who on their day can beat anyone, but you have to bide your time to wait for those moments. And I think it would be nice to get a bit more consistency out of Correa, but he is, again, like a lot of these guys, playing an awful lot of football at the moment, and given his style of play and that he's quite an explosive player, I think that he might be feeling the fatigue a little bit as well. I certainly felt that way towards the end of this match. I think it was hard not to, because Lazio were so pegged back and retreated so far, but they did just look tired. I mean, not only in the way they were a bit ragged defensively, but also in the way that whenever there were these efforts to counter, they were fairly half-hearted efforts, and not many people were really committing to actually trying to get up the pitch. So I'm a bit worried, but at least there's, I'm especially worried because there's another 3 days, and then there's another one, and it's an away European game, so there's a lot of travelling involved as well.
Yeah. On the first goal that you were saying that there was too much space, I thought the problem there was because with Leiva playing as central defender, Acerbi had to move on the left side, and the mechanism weren't working perfectly because they were all in different position as they usually do. So I think probably that's one of the reasons why Sanabria was so alone there in the penalty box. Don't blame anyone, because as we said, Leiva, it's a sort of miracle that he's played there, that he played today, and he was playing in a position where he played sometimes with Liverpool, but we know that it's not his best position. And Acerbi moving to the left, something of the usual movement changed and didn't work out. As well, we have to say that I didn't like Patrick's performance. Now, he's a player that gives everything every time he plays, but central defender is definitely not the position, and we saw it today. Kwame at a certain point reminded me of Cristiano Ronaldo. Every time he had the ball, it was danger, because Patrick couldn't stop him. So I didn't understand if Kwame is a really great football player, or is Patrick so bad in defending? What do you think?
Well, yeah, probably a combination of the two things. I mean, Kwame has been having a great season, and he is one of their biggest threats in that team. But at the same time, I think you're absolutely right. I think Patrick is not a centre back. He's not comfortable in that back three, and I just thought there was a kind of an air of panic about the whole defence today, though. I don't think it was even just him. I think he had a particularly bad game. But actually, even Acerbi at times was really uncertain, uncharacteristically. Strakosha too. The communication between the defence just didn't seem quite right. And I found that a bit odd because, even I'm talking about even before Radu went off injured, and you've still got, if you think about the keeper as part of it, you've still got 3 of the normal 4 who would start. And there just seemed to be a fair few mix-ups I remember one between Acerbi and Strakosha in the first half, and then Acerbi's kind of clearing out for a throw-in when he doesn't need to. Patrick did the same thing, and and then some really bad decisions to take a short goal kick when you're under pressure, and just bizarre stuff going on. And I don't know, I find that really hard to explain why that was happening, because you still had the kind of experienced players on the pitch, the leaders in Lulic and Acerbi and Badel, Lucas, but they just seemed to be lacking a bit of composure. And I don't know, maybe, do you think that's just because Patrick was in that defence with them? They suddenly are so terrified of what might happen next. It's hard to say, but I was a bit worried by that.
I don't know, but what I noticed is the first three ball Acerbi touched today, he got it completely wrong. And I said, that's weird. Acerbi making so many mistakes, that's not him. So I don't know if it was tiredness. Let's not forget that Acerbi played all the matches. If he struggled because the pitch was terrible. I don't know if people noticed, but the condition of the pitch was awful. Or maybe because, as we were saying, it was a completely different starting 11 and the mechanism, the defense mechanism didn't work out. At a certain point, he fall, and I don't know, was it Sanabria that dashed into the net, into the goal all alone, into the box all alone? So yeah, it wasn't the usual Acerbi. I thought Radu played before he got injured pretty well. But yeah, honestly, I was surprised to see Lazio going ahead, because in this condition, Lazio was playing very slowly and it was quite easy for Genoa to defend. But then, after the first 20 minutes of the second half, I thought Lazio was playing really well, and then suddenly everything collapsed.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, for me is tiredness, but also I think Prandelli made some kind of bold decisions to kind of take the game to Lazio, and he did overload the attack with attacking players, and they were also just winning. All the loose balls were won by Genoa players. They were getting there first. They looked like they wanted it more, and obviously being the home side, they were being pushed on as well. And
Alistair, one of the things when you are ahead and you have the chance of counter-attack, the wings are the one that can make the biggest difference, because they have, more space. Usually you defend centrally, so they can run a lot. And both Marusic and Lulic, they didn't do it. Lulic, again, had a terrible match. Now, I didn't check, but probably he's one of the players who have played more minutes this season. But again, this was a terrible match after the one against Sevilla. So every time Lazio had the chance, both weren't able to do it. And so, if you're not risking nothing, even with 4 strikers in your team, then you can keep pushing. You can push even harder, because you know that the other team is not able to counterattack you. And so you can put. Criscido was a defender, and he was just outside Lazio penalty box. So this tells you that all Genoa defenders, all Genoa players were in your midfield, and this is because Lazio wasn't able to counterattack, and the counterattack starts from the wingers, and they were both terrible. I think Bruno Giordao made the only 2 counterattack in the second half of Lazio, and this has to tell you something, So we said it often, but the wingers are one of the biggest problem of Lazio now. We were hoping 2 years ago that Lukaku could help them there, and instead he's one of the disappointment of the season. He was already of last year, to be honest. But yeah, I think this summer a lot of things have to change, because the other teams are improving. And if last year maybe Lazio was the better team fighting for the Champions League, this year, to be honest, it's not like that.
No. Yeah, and that's obviously a problem position, and also, like you mentioned there, I mean, it's a problem position that's absolutely essential in the way that Inzaghi's teams play. I actually thought that first half Marusic was a bit better, I thought, than he had been against Sevilla, at least, in that he was again pressing really high up the pitch as he did against Sevilla. But he was making those runs kind of across the pitch to try and get in behind, which was how he ended up with that chance. He was offside anyway, but obviously he messed up the chance. But I thought he was making some clever runs and causing them a few problems there in attack in the first half. But yeah, I think just in general, just inaccuracy, I suppose, and that's kind of been a big problem the last couple of games for me. I was really pleased with the first half or so of the game today, that it wasn't nearly as sloppy as it was against Sevilla the other night. But I think that is just a big part of Marisic's game that's so problematic, is not only that he's never quite got a handle of the positioning required in his position in my mind, but also that he's just too inaccurate when he gets into good positions, whether it's his crossing, his passing, his shooting, whatever it is. He just never seems to have much conviction in any of it or the ability to produce.
And the thing, Alistair, I don't know if you agree with me here, is often he's in a very good position with the ball in his feet, and he can choose go and risk the one against the defender and maybe get in the box or put a cross, or pass the ball backwards to a central midfielder. He always chooses the second option. It's very rare that he try, and he's powerful. We saw it when he was playing well, that he has those big legs that helps him push from zero. That it's tough for a defender to defend when he starts rushing like that, but he hardly try it. So at a certain point in the second half, he was often alone because the Genoa defender knew that he wasn't dangerous because he would only pass the ball backwards again. So they were pushing all on the other side and stopping Lazio.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're right. I think, well, look, I mean, I don't want to get too downhearted about one defeat. I think it's a bad one, and it could be quite a damaging one, but it doesn't mean we're out of the Champions League race. But if that does happen, and it ends up being the Europa League again, or whatever, if we fail in the Champions League race, I think it does need to be a bit of a wake-up call, like you say, for the club hierarchy, that if they do want that top four spot, Serie A has become a far more competitive league in the last few years in terms of the teams competing for those spots. The Milan clubs have woken up and are competing. Napoli aren't declining under Ancelotti. Roma are still pumping a lot of money and not spending it very well all the time, but they're going to be up there. And then, guys like teams like Atalanta aren't going away either. So they just have to accept, I think, from the lessons of these 3 seasons under Inzaghi, that you can't really get all these things without spending. And they've got the money as well. They've not got as much money, but they do have money to spend.
Yes, talking about money, Alistair, before replying to a couple of questions on Twitter, there have been this big discussion after the Sevilla match. Tare said that he was very disappointed that there weren't that much fans at the stadium against Sevilla. That was a very important match. Most of the fans, some of the Curva Nord replied saying that fans are not at the stadium because the club are not buying important players, and so they don't go to the stadium. What's your position on that?
But I don't agree with that response. I think if your interests are for the club to buy better players, then the club are going to have better revenue streams in order to do that if more fans turn up to the games. It seems obvious, really. But I always think that you should be going along to support your team when you can anyway, regardless of your thoughts about the club hierarchy, about Lotito, whatever. I mean, there's nothing stopping you going to the game and protesting their ownership and making your feelings heard, and that's been done. I think one of the biggest attendances Lazio got for a game was a few years ago when they had the Libera la Lazio protest across the stadium. So, I mean, if you want to go there and make a point, then go there and make a point. But I think people should always be attending these matches. And, when people from the UK ask me about Lazio games and getting tickets, and which they often do, they're astonished by how cheap it is to get to games and how easy it is. I mean, you can roll up to the ticket office just outside the stadium an hour before kickoff, and you'll be guaranteed a ticket for less than €20 most of the time. It's amazing in comparison to a lot of in British football in particular. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that it is basically the first task of a football fan to go and watch your team. That is literally one of the first things you should have on your to-do list. And that's not a valid excuse for me, to be honest.
No, I agree with you. I would say that the stadium would be full if Lazio bought big players. But, Europa League against Sevilla, you have to have 35,000 at least there, 40 if possible, instead of, And the fact is, let's not forget that when Lazio was fighting for relegation, when Lazio was the Lazio of the -9, the Olimpico was full. There weren't places to sit, and there weren't champions there. There were a team fighting, but there weren't Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, or Salas. But still, everybody was going to the stadium. I think now with the excuse of being against Lotito, a lot of fans prefer. Let's be honest, the Olimpico is not a very good stadium. It's not easy to see a match there. It's not like the English stadiums. But on the other side, you can make a difference if you're at the stadium chanting and supporting your team, better than being on your sofa and watching it on Sky. So, but a lot of fans prefer, it's much more easy to watch the match on TV instead of going to the stadium. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I really feel that Curva Nord is making one mistake after the other in the past couple of years. So, really disappointed.
I think the 6:55 kickoffs haven't helped in the Europa League, and you really notice that going to the games from. I mean, I live actually not too far from the stadium, so it's easy enough for me. But for people coming from outside the city and from other areas of the city to leave work on time to get to a kickoff then is not easy, given what Roman traffic looks like, and that Roman public transport doesn't often help that much either. So I can understand why that is a excuse. I just don't think it's enough of an excuse for the attendances to be so low. And the other thing that annoys me as well about this argument is that I take what you mean about the -9 team, but that was a different era when it wasn't so readily available on your TV or in your tablet or whatever. But also in the more modern era, you've got the game against Inter, the last game of last season, and the stadium's packed for it. And that goes to show that when Lazio have something important to play for, what's drawn those fans in is that it's a big occasion and the Champions League is on the line. Well, if you're excited by the Champions League, you should be going to the game every week to watch them. It takes 38 matches to reach the Champions League, not one. I don't think you can just choose when you want to turn up at the end to try and back the team into getting to the Champions League. I think that it's, I don't like that attitude, to be honest.
No. And as I said, a lot use the Lotito excuse to not go to the stadium anymore. Christopher Thomas, we will not get to the Champions League. Come on, even if we did, we get rattled by those big European teams. Harsh but true. I'm not sure about that. And you see Roma, that it's not a great team and that still was able to pass the Champions League group. So, if you get in the Champions League, you still can be lucky and get some average team. So
yeah,
I don't agree with that. I think you're right that it's absolutely difficult for Lazio to get it, especially in this situation. But I think the most difficult part is to get qualified for the Champions League now, especially now that you get directly to the group phase and seeing the records of Lazio in Europa League. I think it wouldn't be impossible to find a good group phase for Lazio. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the draw, and you look at Roma's group though, and you say they got Viktoria Pilsen and CSK Moscow, two teams who I think Lazio have played harder teams than this season in Sevilla, Frankfurt, Marseille. In the Europa League, we've shown that we're more than capable of taking on teams of that kind of size, I suppose. Well, maybe not Frankfurt, given how those two games went, but you take my point. I don't think at the group stage versus the knockout rounds of the Europa League, there's a massive amount of difference. You'll obviously end up getting some massive team a lot of the time, like Roma had Real Madrid, and you can end up getting a really tough group like Napoli did. But I don't think there's any reason to fear Lazio going into a Champions League group and getting absolutely battered by everyone, because there's a lot of decent teams in there, but Lazio have proven over the last few years that they're capable of getting good results in Europe through their results in the Europa League.
And let's not forget, and this is one of the important points, is that a lot of players would give everything to play against big club to show their talent and maybe, get signed by Real Madrid the next year. So when you're playing with these big teams, maybe even Marusic can start playing well just to show everybody that he's a very good player. So I don't agree. I think that the battle is very complicated to get to the Champions League, but group phase is not impossible, honestly. Owolabi Olalekan Gabriel, wow, I hope I pronounced it well. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. We have another crucial game on Thursday, but with this performance, I don't have much optimism going into the game. I don't know you, Alistair, but I didn't have it even before this match against Genoa. So imagine now. The biggest question is who will go to Sevilla and play? Because would you risk Ciro Immobile, seeing how he played today? Would you risk Leva? I don't know.
No, well, the first thing to say is, remember, guys, the game is on Wednesday this week because this is going to pass a lot of people by, but it's a 6 o'clock kickoff CET on a Wednesday night. So don't forget, because everyone will expect it to be on a Thursday. And anyway, I think that it's hard to say. I think it's particularly hard to tell how Inzaghi really feels about this. I mean, he always says that he wants to fight in 3 competitions and take everything seriously, but in the current situation, I don't know, is he really going to want to risk players who are kind of on 50-50 or even worse odds than that in terms of their injuries? I think now, for me, everything has to be building towards making sure we have the strongest possible team available for the derby, and that's 2nd of March. So it's still a couple of weeks away, but if that involves resting key players for this game or even the Milan game, then so be it. I think that's an absolutely massive game. If you're of the opinion that Lazio have screwed up the Champions League race today, I think there'll be absolutely no doubt if we lose the derby, because the derby's obviously always a massive game because it's the derby, but this time around it's even bigger because it's a huge match for the Champions League race. So for me, that has to be the foremost thought in Inzaghi's mind, is getting his team in the best shape it can be for that game.
In my Italian podcast, Davide of Lazio Page said that for him, the biggest target for Lazio is the Coppa Italia, because it's the easiest trophy Lazio can achieve. So he was suggesting to not give up, but don't force all the big players to play against Sevilla. Do you agree? Or, I mean, we are playing against Milan, that it's probably one of the best team now at the moment. Or do you think they still try to reach the Champions League through the Serie A?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that the Coppa Italia is the most achievable objective of the 3. If you're thinking of the 3 objectives as being Champions League qualification in Serie A, winning the Europa League and winning the Coppa Italia, it's a bit obvious, but Coppa Italia is the most achievable one because Milan are in very good form, but we get to play them over 2 legs, and I don't think there's an awful lot between the 2 sides really when it comes down to it. And then if we manage to get through that, it's going to be Atalanta or Fiorentina, so we're going to manage to avoid for once playing Juventus in the final if we do make it there. So I think that he's right in thinking that it's definitely the most realistic objective, but for me, I don't think it's an objective that's worth sacrificing the Serie A race for. I mean, I kind of stand by what I said in the podcast on Thursday, which is that I think that for me, if Lazio's objective this season is to qualify for the Champions League, which it's supposed to be, then the best way of getting there is through Serie A, not through winning the Europa League. So I don't really mind at this stage. I think it'd be different if it was a bit closer, but I don't want the players to go and kill themselves over in Andalusia, trying to get through, because even if we do get through that round, you're still a long way from winning the thing.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is not get battered,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be saying that if everyone was 100% fit, I wouldn't be saying that, because I'd still think that we've got enough options to give every match a good go. But I think as things stand, the game against Milan and particularly the derby are just so important that they have to take precedence over that Sevilla game.
Yep, it's you have to think about all the players available. That's the most important thing. But then you have AC Milan in Coppa Italia. That's really important. I think Europe League is and I'm sorry to say this, it's the less important tournament after the draw, because it's going to be really complicated. There are a lot of big teams there. If you beat Sevilla, that's a big if. Let's not forget that Sevilla won all the matches at home this year in Europe League, so it's going to be really tough. And thinking that afterwards there is Coppa Italia against Milan and the Derby, so probably the two most important matches of the season. Can we say that? Is it true?
Probably so far. I mean, I think this derby is definitely the most important match of the season so far, because of what it means for the Champions League race. And I already thought that before today, but after today, I think it's, if anything, become even more important, because all of a sudden losing that match would make the Champions League or top four finish really, really distant. I mean, that would be require quite a lot of things going our way. So.
Yeah, as usual, this match is key if we lose it. If we lose it, we are pretty much out. If we win it, we're still there. But it's not that we are qualified, because unfortunately there's still Milan.
No.
And we have to see what happens with Atalanta. I mean, Atalanta could be, out of the race at that point. We're going to see. At the moment, Lazio is not even in Europe League, just to make everybody aware of it. We're 7th.
Yeah, and not even that far ahead of Fiorentina, Torino, Sampdoria. I mean, those teams are still definitely capable of catching us if we have a drop-off. And I think it would be a disaster to end up in a situation where the Europa League's not even being achieved. So, yeah, I don't think we want to get too ahead of ourselves. It's just one defeat. But, yeah, I think that we've got a very, very important period coming up now.
Yeah, and the important thing is to remember is that Lazio already played against Juventus and Napoli, while the other team, only Milan, played against Napoli already. So they have some tough matches ahead. Again, the problem would be if Juventus wins the league early and then play against Roma with the B team. That would change a little things.
Yeah.
Alistair, if you don't have any other things to say, maybe a nice stat to finish the podcast?
I don't think there are any nice stats floating around today. I mean, I've checked the usual places, but nobody's been writing anything. So I think everybody's probably as depressed as we are and doesn't really want to say anything about the game today, I'm afraid.
Yeah, usually I go to Lazio page, but the last tweet they have is mine. So this is really bad.
Yeah, you're in a bad place when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Genoa, it's I don't know how to say. In the last 2 years we finally was able to win there, but if you get the last 2 years, we always lost there in incredible fashion, like today. It's football sometimes is so weird. Against Genoa then had won 4 matches at home all season and 3 in the first four matches of Serie A. So, from September to now, only once they won at home, and this is only the second against who? Obviously, Lazio. It's simply unbelievable, Alistair.
I hate playing Genoa.
Yeah.
And I hate playing Goran Pandev particularly.
Oh, when he came in, I said, okay, he's going to score as usual.
He's just so motivated every time he comes on against Lazio, and then that dive was just absolutely appalling behaviour from him. But it goes to show that he'll do absolutely anything it takes to try and get one over Lazio. So,
yeah, he was embarrassing.
Yeah, he does make me nervous. I want him to retire. I mean, come on, Goran. It's about time.
Yeah. Thank you again for joining me, Alistair Mackenzie. Thanks for everybody to listen to the podcast. I know it was another tough moment, but so we really appreciate you following us even today. And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe to Speaker and iTunes and on Spotify. Thank you very much, Alistair. Have a good rest of the day.
Cheers. You too.